All right, so I guess we should probably begin. Hey.
Hello.
How are you?
I am really good. I'm really excited and I'm really grateful. They're all of the feelings that I do feel, but I'm also exhausted and a little bit unwell and very overwhelmed.
Okay, good.
What about you?
I am sick. Although, no, I should clarify. I have been sick and I have the remnants of being sick in the loss of my voice. So our listeners today are going to have to cope with a little bit of huskiness on my end.
You sound hot though.
Thank you. I feel hot.
Like actually temperature-wise.
Yeah, fever through the roof. Nah, but I'm good. It's been a hectic week because I've been unwell, and for anyone who works for themselves will know how hard it is to get sick because we don't have the privilege of sick leave. You know, the show kind of must go on. So I've been trying to find that really delicate balance of pushing through, but also not pushing through and respecting my body and like resting and trying to sleep and nap and all of those things. So
sorry, I'm just kind of giggling a little bit here because I feel like if there was ever a paradox that was more aligned to this podcast, it is you in this very moment. It is you to a T. Like it's like, how do we maintain our health? It's literally like what our slogan is. How do we want to do it all whilst maintaining our health and well-being? And here we are.
I did a post on my Instagram stories last night being like, SOS, I've lost my voice and I'm podcast recording in the morning. Send me your secret remedies. And, you know, people sent me through some amazing little hacks. But there were a couple of people who were like, just don't do the podcast, like rest.
Sorry, that cannot happen.
I'm looking at it like, yes, I know that, but it's not that simple, right? Anyway, so I didn't listen to those people. I wish I could have, but I am so grateful to be sitting here. I actually feel fine. It's just the voice. But before we go any further, should we just kind of kick off with the mindful breath? I think we both probably need it based on where we're at.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so for anyone who's listening at home, you can just join us. We'll just start with a nice deep breath in through the nose and let the breath go. Okay. Feels like now we can begin.
It just makes such a difference just taking one deep breath.
Before we start this episode, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're recording today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the same land in which I've always had the privilege of calling home. I extend my deepest respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
Here we go.
So I'm also curious. I mean, it sounds like you've got lots of different emotions running through your system, but I'm curious about what's keeping you rushing at the moment.
I would say at the moment, in the present, it is the fact that I have just come back off a trip. I went away for a friend's birthday holiday, went to Bali, and it was so amazing to switch off and have a bit of a break. But again, going back to what you touched on, you know, when you kind of work for yourself and, you know, my work is very different. It's similar to yours. I've got so many things on the go. I feel like I have come back to September, which for me is always pretty crazy in terms of AFLW starts. AFL men's season is finals. Obviously, we're rushing slowly. It's like we're really in the thick of all of this podcast stuff. I've got some other little work opportunities that have dropped in that are epic, and I'm so grateful. So it's like going back to all of that feeling of gratitude, and I'm like so lucky at the moment that I'm doing work that really is filling up my cup. But it's incredibly overwhelming because there's so much. And I flew back on the red-eye flight on the Monday night. And so, you know, you miss a whole night's sleep. And so I've just constantly been chasing my tail ever since. And I've come straight back to work. I was out in the country filming this sort of little travel series, which I'll share at a later date, which is just such an incredible opportunity. But it's like straight into that, straight into this AFLW season, Boundary. Like it is just, and because my work is so, like it's constantly changing my mindset to go from footy brain, fitness brain, podcast brain. I just feel very overwhelmed. So it's like the paradoxical emotions that I'm feeling is pure overwhelm and anxiety. My chest is tight and I'm really exhausted, but I'm so excited and I'm so grateful, and I can't wait for the next couple of weeks, and I'm really looking forward to everything that's ahead. So it's just funny, like navigating those two emotions.
It sounds so much. I don't know. I don't know how you do it, but I imagine that your holiday helped to kind of empty the cup. Well, fill the cup or empty the cup, depending on which way you frame it.
It did. Yeah. Needed it. So important to take little breaks like that. And you think, what do you work so hard for if you're not, you know, if you're not taking time out to enjoy life? And that was what it was. It was like, it reminded me how much there is to, you know, there's so much joy and excitement in travel and exploring, and we all need to make sure that that's something that we prioritize if we can. I know I'm very privileged to be able to have the opportunity to do that. Not everyone does, and I can completely acknowledge that. But I've just to be able to change your energy is so nice, and I'm already planning to go back in a couple months' time for maybe a month next time.
Megzy's done the classic thing where she's come back from Bali and been like, how can I live in Bali? I'm like, says literally everyone who comes back from a holiday to Bali. And also in the same breath, you know, it's like so many people go to Bali and get so sick, but yet still are like, how can I live in Bali?
I love it here. And straight away I'm messaging Zoe. I'm like, okay, we're going to start rushing slowly retreats in Bali.
Yes.
When are you free?
Yeah.
But anyway, what about you, babe? What's been keeping you rushing?
Yeah, I mean, probably just what I mentioned before, right? Just being sick, under the weather. So I fell sick on Sunday morning and had to clear my Monday completely because I didn't have a choice, and that was okay. But by Tuesday I had one or two meetings that, like, if I cancelled them, it was really going to cause some issues to my ongoing scheduling. So I just cleared half of my schedule and just had to keep a couple of other things in and just like smash some cold and flu tablets and get it done. And then was really hoping that by Wednesday I'd be feeling good because I really had been resting, like been napping, sleeping heaps throughout the day. And it just was still going. So yeah, Wednesday was another battle, but you know, it's the classic thing of if I totally clear my schedule, the ramifications of that down the line, you know, are going to potentially push me into burnout. And so then I'm given this choice this week of like, what do I do here? Do I continue operating even though my body's, you know, probably needs a little bit more downtime? Or do I clear that but then risk having to push myself later because of commitments and clients and things that I kind of have to uphold from a business perspective and a personal perspective and relationships? And so really, yeah, I feel like I'm kind of chasing my tail with just having so much on, but really my time's been restricted because I'm, you know, really trying to take care of myself. So,
and it's that double-edged sword, because even it's like you talk about burnout and, you know, getting to that point down the track, but how when you're in this situation of being under the weather and run down, but you keep pushing through, you're almost prolonging you getting better. Because So it's like whichever direction you take, you kind of don't really win either way. But
it's a lose-lose.
Yeah, but you know, it's such a common thing for people in the situation that we are, where you kind of don't really have a choice if you work for yourself.
Well, and it's not even if you work for yourself, right?
Yeah,
because
true.
You know, there are people out there who work for other people, but who also have a lot of responsibilities, and so also acknowledging those people too,
100%.
because just I think in the modern world that we find ourselves in, getting sick is a massive inconvenience. And I think that's actually a part of what we want to talk about today, really. And we should probably introduce the theme of the episode at this point. So today we're really tackling this idea of culture and society's timelines. Something like getting sick is deemed as this really negative thing because it impedes us from doing all of the things that not just that we want to do, but that we have to do. And so there's that bigger question of like, where does that have to do actually come from? How did we get here? And so, yeah, the idea of society's timelines feels so relevant to us personally, but to everyone, right? Because we're all within the same rat race, and it creates so much pressure, and particularly for women, because we have the added pressure of the biological clock for those out there who want to conceive. And because most of us are living so unconsciously, it's like we're just going through the motions. We are just kind of ticking the boxes of what society and culture tells us that we should be ticking, without actually pausing to question whether those things align with what we actually want authentically for ourselves. I think another facet is comparison. We so often get stuck in comparing our timeline to the timeline of someone else's without context, right? There's so much complexity into where someone is at in terms of their stage of life, but we're so quick to judge ourselves against other people without the context. And again, that adds so much pressure. I don't know about you or about other people, but for me anyway. And so that's what we're tackling today. Did that make sense?
It made perfect sense. And when you talk about the comparison piece, that's certainly relative to me, because that's where I'm constantly going back and forth with this feeling of like, am I ahead or am I behind? Am I ahead or am I behind? Or am I just exactly where I'm supposed to be? And social media plays a massive part in that. And I don't have a healthy relationship with social media, and it's always something I'm conscious of and trying to get better at. But yeah, it's that constant navigation in the mind of catching myself going, okay, I'm getting influenced here by, or maybe not influenced, but I'm going down this comparison path. When you're seeing friends, people online that have these beautiful relationships and have these families, and I think, well, I'm so far from that. And then I go, hang on, this is the trap. I'm good. And it's that constant navigation in your mind of having to catch yourself.
I also, and sorry to cut you off, but maybe just by way of explaining what we mean when we say society's timelines, just so that feels really clear, it's this idea that we go to school, progress to high school, work really hard, study for exams, get a great score, go to university or college, study really hard, get a degree, potentially go on and do more study, get a master's, and then get a job, and then progress our way through the company or through our career, make lots of money, and then, find a partner, buy a house, have a baby, have more babies, send those kids to school, keep working hard, et cetera, et cetera. You guys get the idea. Need I keep going?
Yeah.
Does anyone feel stressed?
And just so forth.
Just at me saying that out loud, because I do.
It is, it is a cycle, isn't it? And I feel like where I'm at is the polar opposite of all of that. And that comes with pressure. Like you said, the word pressure feels very much associated with the societal timeline. And, for me to kind of bring my own story or feelings into this conversation, what I'm going through at the moment is I've recently turned 36, which is a bit of a strange feeling that I've grappled with, because, I think society expects the societal expectation of a woman in their mid-30s is that really you should be married and having kids, and that's sort of where you're at. And I am far from that. But then just coming back to the age thing, I don't know, it's such a weird thing because I feel like what does your mid-30s, what's it supposed to feel like? And it's always this visceral reaction that people tend to have when they ask what my age is. And then I say, 36. They're like, what? You 36. And it's like, is that because you think I'm immature, or is it because of what I look like and maybe I've aged well or something? I don't know. It's just this constant funny thing. And there was an element of when I turned 35, it was like, cool, I'm in the middle here. I'm in the middle of my 30s, so I can deal with this. But it was the turning 36 where it's like, holy shit, now I'm closer to 40 and I'm no closer to being where a woman is supposed to be by that age. So that just adds this pressure. But I saw this meme on Instagram and it was all about getting to your age. It's like age versus levels. And it's like, why do we refer to age as an age? Why do we not say I've reached level 36? And I was like, yes, that's the way I'm going to refer to age now, because it is. I've leveled up this year. I've learnt more again. I'm way more self-aware. I'm really content in myself if I'm just thinking about my own feelings and not being swayed or influenced by others. So I'm like, level 36 is epic and I'm happy to be here, but I constantly have to catch myself in this net of like the worry of being where I'm at and not being enough for society.
Mm. And do you feel as though at level 36, the amount of, I guess, wisdom and life experience that you have, like what does that mean for you?
I have never felt more self-aware in my whole life. And that is a testament to going from level to level to level. And in each level, you learn something new. You experience different relationships, or you say yes to work opportunities that might not serve you, or you travel, or you just do all of these things. And so I've never been at level 36 before, and it's a whole new world. And the way that I feel here versus what I did last year and the year before is so different. Like I remember even when in my earlier 30s, at that point I was like, I need to find a man, I need to have a kid, and I need to lock that shit down. And of course, because that was my mindset, it was pressure, it was society. I, entered into relationships that didn't serve me at that time, but I stayed in them for longer than I should have, because I was like, I have to make this work because that's what I should be doing at this age. Whereas now I've got out of that mindset, got out of that relationship, and I'm like, no, that is not what I need. What I need right now with where I'm at in this present is to be focusing on myself, focusing on my health, my career, my just feeling good and being grateful and embracing that, and surrendering to the fact that when all of that stuff's meant to happen, it's meant to happen. And you know what? If it doesn't happen, then that's my story. And accepting that. And yeah, I think I've got to this point of just being really content. Maybe not necessarily happy, but very content. What about you?
I'm not finished with you yet.
I'm trying to handball here.
Well, no, but I think because I think it's so important to acknowledge your success, which I know that you're capable of doing because we do talk about it. But from the outside, I guess so many people would look at you and look up to you and be like, whoa, she's killing it, and I could never do that, or, this idea of comparison, because we're all doing it whether you admit it or not. But I guess what you're saying is that it's kind of twofold. One part is that everything comes at a cost. right? And so, you know, I know for you at the moment, your career is such a massive focus, which means that doesn't leave as much time and attention to, you know, go and, you know, date or find a partner. I know we were talking about this morning. And, you know, so just like acknowledging that, I guess, that things come at a cost. And also that the like relinquishing of control, it sounds like, is a massive part as well. And I think that is courage that comes with that, actually.
Yeah.
And that, like, it's okay.
It's okay to be where you are. In fact, where you are is exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I don't always think that clearly, like that thought isn't always prevalent in my mind, but the deep rooted ideology that I have is that. And so when I catch myself going off path with that value that I have right now, I always come back to it. But comparison, the thief of joy, the thief of reality. And, it is. It's like you just got to, work hard at accepting where you are at. It's not an easy thing to do. And I'm, constantly catching myself out. But I have faith in what is meant to be will be, as cliche as that sounds. And I do have deep desires to be a mum one day, and I love and I can't wait to be in a loving relationship and build a family and a life with somebody. But I'm also not I don't want to force that at this point. And I've done that before. Yeah. And I would rather just let it happen. And it might happen tomorrow, and it might happen next year. It might not happen. But I have faith enough that it will. And, even just talking about there's such a conversation in the women's biological clock. And I know we're going to get into the topic of egg freezing and all of that stuff. But, that is the path that I potentially want to go down to just take some of that pressure off.
Well, you also mentioned that at level 36, you're the most aware that you've ever been. And that's so important, because notice how that's an example of living really consciously. Because what you named before that, it's almost like desperation. It's like, oh shit, I'm at this age and I need to fulfill these or check these boxes in order to be deemed as okay or normal culturally. And that kind of feeling of desperation is often a repellent of the thing that we actually want. The more desperate we are for something, the further away that thing, it's like having the two ends of the magnet pushing up against each other. And so, it really sounds like you've landed at this point at level 36, which is a hell of a lot of wisdom, a hell of a lot of self-awareness, but with that comes so much trust and actually the opposite of desperation, which is like allowing things to flow and trusting that it will work out. And that's really courageous.
Well, thank you. But that's enough about me for now. I want to talk about you, because you two are in a similar boat to me. We're on the same ship. We just, have slightly different stories, different scenarios. I'm single, you're married, we're in our 30s. We still feel the same pressures though. So I want to know, Zoe, where are you at in this whole conversation? How do you feel?
Well, we often talk about how we're so similar but also so different, because we are in different contexts, we are different ages. And I think that that's one of the cool things about us collaborating on this podcast, because we have such similar values and ideas around what we want life to look like, but we're in really different places, but also the same place, because we're sitting here right now. So I guess the contrast to your situation right now is that, I am married. Shout out to Guy. Woo, love you, baby.
We love you, Guy. Biggest legend of all time. Actually, just a moment for Guy.
A moment for Guy. Pour one out for Guy. I love him.
He is a great human. And talking about comparison for a second, I just want to bring it in. I will not settle for anyone less than a Guy, and that makes me so happy that you have that beautiful, beautiful connection to your husband and your relationship. And I see that and I admire it so much. And I often look at you two and I'm like, that is what I want. And unless it is that or similar, I don't want anything. I'd rather be on my own. So we love you, Guy. Shout out to you.
Shout out, I know. And maybe we can do another episode on the evolution of our relationship. But yeah, Guy and I have been married since, oh gosh, we had a COVID wedding. So, oh my gosh, it must be 2021. That time feels like a bit of a blur. So don't come at me for not remembering the year. 2021 it must have been. Yeah, so we have a beautiful relationship and I love him so much. But, you know, being a career-focused woman inside of this societal expectation or timeline, you know, it's really hard, actually. It's really hard to want to, you know, grow a business and have a career, and for me, like multiple kinds of careers at the same time, but also maintain a really healthy relationship, or in my case, marriage. And often it can come at a real conflict in values because, of course, my number one priority is my relationship. I should say relationships, actually. My relationship to myself is incredibly important because without that, my relationship with Guy will be fragile. But often, you know, there's only so many hours in the week, and I feel icky even saying this out loud, but it's just true that oftentimes I'm making decisions that are more in service of business and ambition and success than the well-being of my relationship. And I think that that's because, of course, there's this assumption of the kind of ongoing stability of the relationship. It's like it's constant, it will always be there. And so, you know, I can turn away from it for a moment and do this other thing and trust that it's okay. But, you know, often that comes at a cost because I would say one of the main causes of conflict in our relationship is Guy trying to battle for my time and attention. And I'm so aware of that and I hate it. I hate every conversation that we have that is oriented around that because he is my everything and I want him to feel so prioritized because in my mind, he is my number one priority. But my behavior doesn't always reflect that. And that's our relational Roman Empire. It's actually not. There are other ones, but that's one of them. Yeah, so I guess for me, it's hard. It's really hard. In fact, not just for me, I know for everyone it's hard. Relationships are hard whether you're highly driven and ambitious or not. Right?
Yeah, you have to work at them.
Yeah, because actually I both love and hate this analogy. I've heard someone explain it like this before, that actually starting a relationship is like creating a company and you've got two CEOs of that company, yourself and your partner, and it's actually about creating a company culture and workflow and company values that means that you can continue to build and grow that company / relationship for a really, really long time. And
that's a perfect analogy actually, because on the flip side to that, to relate a little bit, my previous relationship did not work purely for that reason. And exactly what you were saying, like I put my hand on my heart and know that I did not show up at all to work on that relationship or on that company. It was like quite one-sided, and it's a reflection that I can look back on and say, okay, I know what I need to do differently next time. But two people must actively work to build the company and allow it to grow and flourish. I love that.
Yeah. It's a work in progress. But I'm so, in the same breath, I'm so lucky because I have Guy's unconditional support, and that's really important because, whilst he tolerates a lot, I also know how supportive he would never get in the way of me and what I want for my life, because actually what I want for my life is what I want for our life, because everything that I'm working towards, yes, it's for personal fulfillment and, to align life with values and all that stuff. But, there's also financial aspects that I want to contribute to the family household, and we have a mortgage and, all of these things that come with being a part of the world and having a relationship. And so, I'm so lucky that he understands that everything I do is not just for me, but it's actually for us. And And that helps, right? That gives me peace of mind sometimes.
Can I ask, if you don't mind, how you feel about, so, you know, talking about societal pressures, the pressure, you know, we're talking about motherhood and creating a family and all of that sort of thing. Where does that land for you as somebody that's in a relationship?
Well,
buckle up.
I mean, yeah, it's really, really tricky because, I mean, I think this applies whether you're in a relationship or not, but I guess being in a relationship brings me that one step closer to the manifestation of wanting to be a mother. And yeah, that's definitely something that Guy and I both want. It's also important to note, actually, and not that I want to tell Guy's story for him, but it's an important factor that Guy's a firefighter. He's been in the fire brigade for I think he just had his 7th year. And so the level of stability in his life is constant. You know, he'll be in the fire brigade forever. It's an amazing job. He loves it so much. And so he has like a really clear trajectory of what, you know, from a career perspective, his life will look like. And so for him, you know, he's got that stability, and so he's ready, right? He's keen. And of course he also is not ready in many ways because he really values his freedom and autonomy. So, you know, he's not kind of pushing us in any way. But for me, there's so much instability, right? I feel like I want to get to this place, this elusive checkpoint in my business and professional life in which I can then go and have children and you know, feel secure and not feel stressed. This doesn't exist, by the way, because I've been saying this for a really long time now.
Yeah, I'm like, what does that look like when you get there?
Yeah, literally nothing. So yeah, it's something that I, you know, and I've heard people say this before, but this is my Roman Empire. This is the thing that occupies most of my mind. It's like, where is that line for me in putting off? And I hate that language, but I'm just trying to be honest, putting off having children so that I can continue building my thing and fostering a really great relationship with my husband, whilst not pushing that line too far to the point that it doesn't become possible, because just to give my age away, I'm 32. And also not wanting to be that person who values their career more than family, because I know that is an empty pursuit. Not empty, that's poor language, but when I really strip things back and I take my ego out of it, I take my self-esteem out of it, I take my self-worth out of the equation, like I want to have a family that I love and feel loved by, because that, I know that as a human being, that is what gives the most fulfillment. You know, career is a great way to feel ambitious and you know, fulfilled in some ways, but you know, and this isn't for everyone. I can only speak personally, but anyway, it's about finding that line, and we're navigating that together.
Yeah, it's a journey, isn't it? And it is complex, and you know, women, it's different for women, and yeah, bringing it back to the, you know, how I feel as a single gal, it's like, how I can't even imagine, like, it feels so far away, because at this point in my life, I'm literally not even dating anyone. I'm not barely even talking to anyone. So it's like, you know, and then time moves so quick. So I'm like, before I know it, it's going to be Christmas, and then you go down then 6 months later, and then we hit the next level, and it's like, there goes another, you know, there goes more eggies, more and more like, what? But speaking of eggies, that is definitely something that's on the trajectory for me at this point, you know, and I think that it's become pretty common, and it's a conversation for a whole nother episode. Once I go down that path, I've sort of started the process.
Oh, you have?
In terms of just, I've had my AMH levels tested and kind of started to look at different options. It's obviously a very expensive journey, but I just think it'll give me just just a bit of a grace period. And like you said, the Roman Empire, it's the same for me but obviously different scenarios, but the same. I think about it all the time. And it's funny because I never really, the desire to want to create a family and be a mum has only really kicked in the last few years for me. It hasn't always been there. I haven't always been dreaming of that life. I've always really valued, and when we talk about values, we both really value freedom, and I love fun and travel and all of that has always been the priority for me. So yeah, but now, you get to this point and it's like, okay, well, the reality is I do have that desire, and I think to protect myself in some way, the going down and exploring the egg freezing feels like a relatively simple, I guess, or a bit of a solve at this point. So yeah, that I think will be my next step over the next few months, is to really kind of explore that, so that if I don't meet somebody in the foreseeable future, at least I know that when I do, that's there.
Yeah. How are you actually feeling about that?
I feel it makes me feel a little bit sad in a way, because I'm like, it's just not where I expected I would be. As somebody who does love and as somebody who does have a desire to really create a life with somebody, I just didn't think that I would be in a position where I'm not there yet. But in saying that, as I mentioned, I am really content. Like, I love my life is so good. I've got nothing really to complain about. I love my friends. Like, I love you so much. I love everything that is in my life right now. But yeah, I do feel like there is something that is missing. Like, and I think that's maybe why I don't feel necessarily happy. I just feel content, because I do feel like there is something that's not there. And I look forward to getting to a point where I get to share life with somebody, but I'm also not willing to force that. And I'm not willing to make that my priority, because right now my priority is myself. And so when it comes along and when it happens, it'll happen.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
Do you think, because we've spoken about this, the idea of feeling content but not necessarily happy, and I think happy is an elusive emotion and not something that we necessarily should be striving to feel 100% of the time. Yet I think it's also really important, and especially knowing you, because you radiate joy and happiness. Do you think that it's possible to find your happiness without the presence of partner and family? Like, not that it's black and white. Like, I of course I know the answer to that in some way, but yeah, where do you sit with that?
That is a great question, because, really, how are you to know? Because we don't know. If only I could look into the crystal ball. And I tell you, I did have a tarot card reading while I was in Bali.
I'm like, you don't have a crystal ball?
Yeah.
Keep up.
Well, I actually do. I talk to it all the time. It doesn't, not a lot of it comes true or makes sense, but anyway.
Is it called ChatGPT?
I do talk to the crystal ball, and, I hope that that's in my story. But if it isn't, then it's also learning to accept that that's okay as well. And my life as it stands right now, and I know as it progresses, I have a great life. I have an amazing family. I have the best mates in the whole world, and we have the best fun, and, work hard, and I'm in a situation where I can save enough to go and explore the world and travel. Like, there's so many other things in my world that fill my cup to the point that it overflows. So if I don't find this thing that I think will fill that void, which is the missing piece, the love and the family and that connection to somebody that's very intimate and deep, if I don't find that, which, who knows, I'm okay. Everything is going to be okay, but I very much have faith in the cliche saying, if it's meant to be, it'll be. And if not, then who cares? My life is good. I love you. I love my friends. I love life.
Love you too.
But you said something about ChatGPT before.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Well, I guess I couldn't help but be a little curious around this idea of the ideal timeline that we tend to live by culturally. And I was thinking, like, where does this actually come from? Like, when did this begin? And so I asked ChatGPT.
Where all great
Yeah.
answers come from.
Exactly. So take this with a grain of salt, obviously, because I did not do the backup research to justify any of it. But one thing I thought was really interesting was the idea of agricultural life, which is that in earlier societies, life stages were actually tied to the rhythms of agriculture, meaning that early marriage and having children was actually necessary because of the need for labour, working on the land.
Wow.
But then also with industrialisation, which of course came next after agricultural times, a more structured life course developed, which was centred around education, work and retirement. And it was this era that really solidified the notion that a linear life path with clear expectations at each stage is what's required to progress through the levels. But then I think there are obvious ones as well. I mean, this might be really boring, but like post-World War II, societies and economic stability led to the ideal nuclear family. So the expectation that people should follow this specific life course, school, job, marriage, home, children, finishing in requirement, means that in terms of capitalism, that it's predictable. Right, that behaviour is predictable.
Wow, no, that's fascinating.
Yeah, living on this timeline means that economic patterns like home buying, car ownership and retirement savings follow like a linear path of predictability, which is just perfect. And then the other one, which I feel like I might have touched on this in my intro episode actually, which is the idea of the educational system. So it's like you go through school being told that you need to learn and retain this information to then regurgitate it to get yourself a score. And I think that that also creates this kind of set path, which is like you progress through the numbers of school to then spurt you out with a particular number. You know, and numbers are always sequential, of course. Well, not always, but in this context they are. Which then just reinforces this idea that everything is a part of a timeline. But actually, another way to look at it is that actually life goes in cycles. You know, life is cycling around all the time, and whilst it might feel like we're going in a linear direction, that one thing leads to the other, we're also all going around in circles.
I certainly feel that way a lot of the time.
Anyway, that's all I've got from ChatGPT.
ChatGPT with the goods. Gee whiz. Well, I feel like I'm here to challenge all of that.
Well, I mean, I guess to round out in terms of how do we actually tackle this, right? We find ourselves in this point in history in which there's more pressure than ever before because of all these factors, economical, fucking societal, you know, all of the things. And so it's like, well, what do we do? Because we can't avoid it, right? Some people do. Some people go and live in a yurt on a property and make their own food. Unfortunately, I'm not quite there. But it sort of becomes a question, well, if we're a part of this system, how do we be in it in a way that helps us to feel well, as opposed to going through the motions, feeling this constant amount of pressure and comparison, and then getting to the end of it and thinking, hang on a second, this isn't even what I want. I'm not even happy. And I think I said it in the beginning, but the difference for me anyway is this idea of conscious awareness. And again, I think I spoke about this on the intro episode as well, which is, what is it actually, like what changes when we actually zoom out enough to look at this really clearly, to be able to not just be in the system, but zoom out enough to actually recognize that there is a system that we're a part of. And then from that awareness, self-awareness, but also awareness of the whole, it's like, well, now I can start to make choices that don't have to kind of rebel against so much, although while although sometimes, yes, it is a kind of rebellion against it, but decisions that feel in service of what we want as human beings, not what we're told we should want. Making decisions that feel really aligned with the kind of people we want to be, the kind of people that we want to show up in the world as, to kind of take the competitive edge off everything, right? Again, for me, it's like when I'm more conscious and I make decisions based on what I truly want and how I feel inside of myself, then I don't feel like I'm at war with the world.
100%.
To compare myself or even to listen to other people's opinions, right? Oh, you've been married for that long and you don't have kids yet. Oh, that's so interesting. When are you guys thinking about having children? It's like, hang on.
Yeah.
Thank you for your unsolicited opinion. But actually in my body as it stands in this moment in time, I'm okay.
Yep.
No, and I don't get that right all the time, but I'm trying.
Can I ask a quick question before we round out? But is there something that you do to help you get to that point of like accepting that, or like how do you navigate that? Like your mind, when you get asked that question, like how do you navigate that?
Yeah. Well, this isn't so much a response to that question that I might get asked, but for me it's curiosity. Like always coming back to zooming out an extra layer so that I can understand things for what they actually are, not just what I first expect them to be. Right? And I think like this is going to open up a whole other conversation, but we've spoken about this, like the example with your car, right? You're like, okay, I want to get a new car. I've had my car for ages. Like I feel like I'm ready to have a new car, but then you were curious enough to be like, but why?
Yeah.
There's actually nothing wrong with the car that I am driving right now. It's functioning. It works.
Other than the fact that it didn't look like a car that a 35, 36-year-old woman should be driving.
Exactly. And so that level of curiosity to ask yourself in that moment, why?
Yeah.
Why do I feel like I want a new car?
Yeah.
That is how I do it as well. Like I just ask myself this question of, hang on, like why? Why do I feel this way? Why am I feeling this pressure? Where is that coming from? And is that true for me, or is that just true because it just is true for the expectations of others? But I want to be really clear in that even though sometimes I get clear on the answer, right? Like the children thing, for example, it doesn't mean that I always make the decision that's in service of the thing that I should do. I still experience that kind of inner struggle, right? Just because we know something, it doesn't mean that it will immediately change. But at least when I know it, at least there's
consciousness.
At least there's consciousness there, and that will give me the opportunity at some point in time, ideally, to build the courage to make a different decision.
Yeah.
Does that
absolutely?
Does that feel confusing? It felt a bit confusing.
No, it makes perfect sense, and I think going back, just the ability to be curious.
Yeah,
really, ultimately is what you just said there. Just being curious with yourself and genuinely taking time back to just say why. Yeah. The clarity and 100%. And I think that's a great tool to share and to be able to. It's not easy to be able to do that, but if you can get really, really clear with yourself and have conversations with yourself, that's something that you've got the ability to do. And, even going back to journaling and things like that, you leaning into things like that to just help you process your thoughts sometimes and just to get them out of the head. I use my journal for things like that all the time, like journal prompts, like why do I think this way? Why am I thinking this way? Or why am I obsessing over this? Or why do I care about that? And I write it out and it helps.
Because what do you notice changes when you do that?
Well, you just have a bit more clarity.
Yeah.
You have a bit more clarity. So, I think that's a great way to round out on that, and we could continue talking about this all day. And I think we probably will for a long time to come. This is an evolution of this conversation because it's so relative to us right now. But I think that there's a lot in that conversation today. I think maybe a nice way to round out, which we will do in every episode, is to bring it back to the question that we ask at the beginning of every episode. What's keeping you rushing at the moment? Now, on the flip side to that, I want to ask you, what are you going to do in this moment to help you slow down?
The fact that I need a moment to think about that feels like a problem. This is so cliche and obvious, and it's like such a boring answer. I wanted to think of something better. But right now, for me, it's permission to rest. Permission to rest. But it's kind of a paradox because I can't give myself that permission until about 24 hours to 48 hours time. Yeah, so for those playing along at home, we are pre-recording this episode, but tomorrow is our launch date, which means that we have a bunch of incredible women coming for a community event, and I want to bring my best and fullest and most energetic self to that. And so between now and then, permission to rest, do nothing, and then post-event, same thing, rest and recuperate and get myself ready for a new week.
Nice.
What's helping you to slow down?
Well, yeah, I would actually say very similarly to you. Right now, it is just not reality that in this very moment I can slow down. From the minute that I got back into Melbourne till Sunday, I knew I was, from like morning till night, I've packed about 25 bags to do all of the different things that I need to rush around to each day. But I know that what I'm doing on Sunday is I'm booking myself into Inner Studios, which is a place in Collingwood.
Epic.
I'm going for a sauna. I'm going to do the whole sauna, plunge, chill. I'm going to get a massage, and I'm just going to have a full at home, watch the footy, watch Netflix day, and that is going to be my opportunity to just, Sunday's my rest. I'm literally not going to talk to a single soul. And I need to sit in a sauna to sweat out some of this congestion that I have from travel and whatnot. And that I feel will give me a bit of a boost of energy to attack the next week. So, yeah, if you can just implant one rest day in amongst the rushing and the busyness and the chaos, in fact, that I know gives me the ability to just refuel a little. So that's my plan. That's my favorite way to spend a Sunday as well. So
I feel like relieved just hearing you talk about that plan.
Bring it on. I'm literally counting down the minutes till then. But thank you for being so open and sharing and pushing through to be here to give. You know, it's very appreciative, and I know that lots of people will take something from that.
And let's not glorify the push.
Yeah.
Don't push. Just don't push. I was thinking right at the beginning when you were talking about your schedule, since you've come back out, it's like back to back. I wanted to say, and that is why we weren't not going to record today, because between your schedule and my schedule, for us to cancel this means that we might not be able to get back together for ages. You know, and again, it's like the paradox of this entire podcast is that to make this podcast happen, I had to push a little today, but it's so important. And I love sitting here with you like this. I love us doing this.
Me
and
too.
I love you
I
so
love
much.
You too.
Right, episode 1, done and done.
Ready?
There we
Cut. The content discussed in this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If any of the topics we've covered today feel overwhelming, we recommend seeking individual support. If you or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14 or 13 Yarn on 13 92 76.